I'm here with Kefaya, which is probably the best band I've heard in, I don't know, in the last few years. And Kefaya performed at the Goa Jazz Festival yesterday, and they had a standing ovation, and they were just fabulous. So I'm here with two of the members, and the rest of them are also around, and we hope to catch them later. And this is Giuliano and Dominique, and their music is probably the most interesting new age jazz we've all heard.
So we are all students of music, and we all are, fascinated by various folk tradition and classical traditions from different parts of the world. But what we really wanted to do was a band that represents the ideology that is in us, which is an ideology of internationalism. We believe in no borders and freedom of movement. And we believe in culture and identity, and we believe that that's very important to celebrate. But we don't believe in cultural purity and nationalism. So our music is really a representation of that. It's trying to create an environment where it's safe to experiment, exchange, and learn from each other. So a big part of our music is also collaboration, and the reason why so many influences fall into Kefaya, it's because of the nature of the band as a collaborative project and as an internationalist band.
Yeah, and in the first album we have collaborations from musicians from all over the world, and this is because we are lucky enough to live in a society that still accepts people from around and gives us this chance. And what we do is also trying to adapt certain kinds of music to the instruments that we have. So it's more like Western, maybe rock instruments, or instruments that are generally used in specific styles. We try to adapt them to different kinds of music.
And also you combine like protest music with jazz, dance, hip-hop, and the title of your band, which is Kefaya. And if you would like, it would be lovely to know how did you come about this title, and of course like give audiences a brief sort of introduction.
Yeah. So Kefaya is an Arabic word that means enough, and it was the unofficial name of the grassroots movement that started the Arab Spring in Egypt. So it's basically, we wanted to have a name that had a political significance. So first of all, we were really inspired by this democratic movement the grassroots movement that came from people and had the power to be subversive and to essentially get a government down. So we were really inspired by that, and also we wanted to celebrate the fact that there is a lot of Islamophobia. We feel the Muslims are really essentially demonized by the media. So we wanted to have a name that in a sense gives our support, when we think that that's a completely construct, is not really truth. People associate Muslim with terrorism, and there is all this kind of media propaganda that goes everywhere. So we felt that it was important to celebrate that. So the significance of the name is a celebration of a grassroots movement that has a democratic movement that had the power to bring down a government, and show our support to our Muslim friends, for solidarity, for the suffering that they're going through.
Yeah, and often protest music develops in areas, in specific areas where there are certain kinds of issues, and what we try to do is to bring it on a more international level.
Kefaya started as the beginning of this band was about researching into protest songs from around the world. So that's how it came about. So and then the rest is a development of this idea. Then we start writing our own music, but still giving a political significance, using samples, using the title of the track. Lots of the music is instrumental or in different languages, so not necessarily readable, to an audience in terms of the content in the lyrics. But so try to find a way to still bring our message across.
Yeah, yesterday's show again was like very beautifully designed. You had the sound clips, and if you could tell audiences who've not seen the show a little bit about how you came to the design of yesterday's show, basically.
Well, the show is essentially we have our album, which is basically it's a kind of a tribal diary in a sense. We have collaborated with so many musicians from Palestine, from Italy, from India, from different country. So the live set is a representation of that research and that journey we went through it. And because we cannot travel with 7-8 musicians, unfortunately, we use a lot of electronics and sample, and which also we used on the album. In fact, we used this radio sample to give a political context to the song. So so the show essentially is a synthesis of this idea in a quartet and instrumental. Obviously presented in a quartet, so it's instrumental music in this case.
Yeah, well, it's developing this idea of including more produced sounds, produced loops or samples, and including them. Also because having as Giuliano was saying, an instrumental lineup at the moment, it's also useful to communicate a message. Sometimes to use some samples or some spoken sections in the tracks.
And also the use of sitar. I mean, the element of the way you use the sound of sitar. I mean, how did you was it during your travels to India previously?
Well, we don't use a sitar actually, but we all students of Indian classical music. So I've been studying Indian classical music for more than 10 years now. Coming to India every year, going to Calcutta to learn. My teacher is in Calcutta. So we spent, and everyone else is as well, start coming to India now regularly, the whole band, and we all are exposed a lot to Indian classical music and folk. So it's been really a process of learning for us, 10 years of practicing, seriously Indian classical music, and trying to find a way of adapting musical language that wasn't designed for this instrument, but so finding a way to adapt it. And so it's great that you hear a sitar, even if we didn't have a sitar on stage. So it's
the sound of sitar.
Yeah. In terms of you get this kind of sense of all the kind of embellishment and expressions that are used, and lots of the material we write is rag based. So there is a strong connection with our music in India, obviously. Yeah,
and also specifically for my instrument, for bass. Actually, bass doesn't really have a role in Indian classical music. There are instruments that work in the same register, but the role is completely different.
Exactly.
So I am trying to find something that can be included and not being just a pastiche, in a respectful way of the tradition, of the culture.
Because I remember reading your website, and it's music. I mean, people from across borders, and you've gotten together. And so, how do you work around those kind of restrictions, like border restrictions and countries and visas and all of those things?
Yeah. I mean, it's a nightmare. But most of the musicians of Kefaya, for practical reason, for the band now, they are based in London. But for instance, we're doing a new album now with Elaha Surur, which is an Afghan folk singer, and she's a refugee in the UK. Which the new album is all based on song written by women in Afghanistan, women that often were persecuted for being musicians, and so we did a research and a selection of these songs. So there is already a scene of immigrants, refugees everywhere, and people there are forced to leave their homes. Just a little.
Yeah, sorry. Go on. Yeah.
People they are often forced to leave their homes, and they are. I mean, we are immigrants ourselves. Me and Domenico, we live in the UK, but we are originally from Italy, and now with Brexit, there is all this question: what's going to happen? So there is really a need to connect people and musicians that they are experiencing, and having also had this kind of experience being immigrants, because we all are in a sense. We don't believe in purity. The world is a fluid thing. People is been moving, and culture has been transforming all the time. It's just a natural process. Nationalism is just a way of blinding people and forget and about what the real issues and political issues are. Basically, we just on a practical level, we live in London, so all the musicians they are now working on the live set with Kefaya. They are based in London. The album was actually realized while we were traveling. Me and Al, we started this project when we were in Leeds many years ago, but we are also involved in lots of other projects like Domenico and Joost, which is the drummer. So we all travel around independently and as Kefaya. And as part of this travel, we met lots of musicians and lots of people. And if there is enough openness, you always end up having a collaboration, having a jam, and maybe develop some material. So so it's kind of an organic process. But really, what we care about, in a practical sense, we're all based in London, and we can only do it because London is such a multicultural place,
Yeah, just about this concept of this idea of purity. There's no such thing. It's just some kind of thought degeneration given by fear, which is imposed by media or by a specific section of the mainstream culture. And we try to expose this in a way with our work, with our music.
Se encontrado a flamenquito